Welcome to Withdraw Consent. My name is Victor. This is Jack. So, Jack, have you had any or heard any really wild conspiracy theories recently that I may have not heard?
I've got the best one for you.
Okay.
Right? This is so insane that I can't even believe these words are going to leave my mouth. But what if I told you that this happened, right?
Okay.
During the Battle of Britain in World War II, when the Luftwaffe was attacking England, that the British military turned their artillery cannons on their own cities and fired, mass murdering their own citizens for what reason, you say? To make sure they go to work in the munitions factory the next day. It's too stupid to be real.
Yeah.
I was watching this guy on YouTube and I'm like, this guy's phenomenal. And then he said something about this and I'm like, you just lost me. No credibility whatsoever from now on. Wait, let me look it up because I told my
Just
wife
to make
about
sure.
it.
Yeah.
Let me look it up. Happened. It happened.
So this isn't even like fringe, like
No,
we don't know if it happened?
It was widely reported in the news at the time. You got to hear how it gets to this story. It's a phenomenal story, okay?
But these were the good guys, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely, you know?
Okay, yeah.
So basically, here's where it starts. World War I.
Okay.
So we got the beginning of air warfare. We got biplanes, triplanes, balloons dropping bombs.
Yep.
Can't hit anything over 3,000 feet with their guns, right?
Oh, as far as anti-air. Okay.
Right. So what they do is they bring in these 3-inch naval cannons. I'm going to put a picture of one up on the screen. And they bring them and mount them to protect the cities. And they shoot artillery up in the air to hit the airplanes.
Oh, okay.
So, for example, in 1917, you could look at the article below, there was one air battle where 22 bombers bombed various parts of London. And they fired, I believe, 3,000 shells into the air at them. And in this instance, 55 civilians were killed, but only 10 were killed by the artillery.
Okay, so this is not like airburst. This is literally, if it doesn't hit anything, it's just coming back down.
Well, later on, they're going to be programmed to explode at 10,000 feet, and then they just fall back down and explode. I got the horror stories for you of how this happened, right?
What the?
But they're not going to make that mistake in World War II. Do you know why? They do a lot of studies in the interwar period, and they decide two different things. They decide that shooting the artillery like this causes up to 50% of the deaths that the bombers cause. Up to 50% of the deaths that they claim the bombers have are from the artillery shells.
Oh.
And number two, they made a rule. And the rule is the bomber will always get through. This is the rule. There's no technological way to stop them. Now in the future, we're going to have rocketry, radars developed during World War II. So basically, what happens is now World War II comes. Okay, so they know these things. And they decide, wait a second, if people know that the bomber will always get through, what will they do? They'll leave the cities. And they'll go to the rural areas. They'll be 100% safe and they will live through the war, but they will not go to work in the munitions factories.
Oh.
Therefore, we need to defend London at all costs. They bring these 3-inch guns, these naval guns, the World War I ones. Yeah, they bring those in on lorries. They're bolted down to lorries, park in front of your house. We'll save you. Quick, to the shelter, as they're firing artillery into their own city, right? And so the way I described it at the beginning is the truth. It's absurd, though, that this happened, right? And you can look in the article below, but it's wild because areas that aren't getting bombed are getting shelled with artillery. So, for example, in the thing below, and these are covered in the news at the time. So there was a cafe where people were just eating outside the bombing zone. Artillery shell hit, 17 civilians dead, right? There was another one in the description, and it was a meetings of the women's naval, blah, blah, blah. 10 of the girls died in one bombing. There was another one in the description below that was a wedding, and the artillery shell went in through the chimney, killed the bride, blew the legs off the groom, and killed 11 guests.
How?
This is insanity, right?
Okay.
But it's all just, they're not hitting anybody. So like in the description I gave you below with the 22 bombers and the 3,000 shots, 0 hits.
0 hits by the anti-air artillery.
Yeah, by the artillery. They're just bombing. A lot of them just hit in the countryside. A lot of them blow up in the air. Like whatever, then some come down randomly. We'll see what happens, right?
And you said this was reported on at the time?
Yeah, it was widely reported in the news. But what can we do? We've got to defend London. So at the time, they also have the anti-aircraft guns, like you would think of, but they also have the artillery.
Okay.
And so they're using a combination. And so like in 1937, they had 181 pieces, which were mostly, I think that's number, it's in Wikipedia. And those were mostly the 3-inch guns. And then by the time Battle of Britain got here, they had like 1,081 or 41 or something, So they had increased a lot, but they're also adding a bunch of old artillery to it.
Right.
And they just don't want to say, hey, well, we're not defending London.
But the other thing is we're just killing our own people. That's a better thing to say?
I guess. But this is the story, though. This is it's
That
just
is
so
insane.
fantastic. And when I was watching the YouTube video, I don't even know if I'll bring this up in future videos because it's so absurd that people will just be like, I'm flipping off these clowns. But this is a thing, you know? And the guy, I just lost credibility for him instantly when he said it. Now I'm like, oh, he's ultra credible. He's so far in the know. I know all the things about this war. Nope, don't know this. Don't know a bunch of other stuff, I'm sure, you know?
So is it just shooting the artillery in there? Do you know if this was just an English thing? Like, did they do that in Europe? England?
I want to talk about that because I have no idea.
Gotcha.
I have no idea. And I thought about it, and I thought, what if Germany did this too, right?
Right.
Put on this show. Well, they would obviously point out that they were doing it. And if they weren't doing it, they would lie and say they're doing it. But I've never heard the accusation that Germany did it.
Gotcha.
So I'm assuming that they didn't.
Okay.
Right? And they actually liked their people.
What?
Right? It's bad for morale when the wedding gets blown up.
Right, you know? Think.
Anyways, it's just...
I don't understand, like, if you're reporting it that we're bombing our own cities, isn't that impotence for the people to move to the rural area anyway?
Yeah, you would think. But they're just saying, like, oh, it's a shell that malfunctioned. It was supposed to explode at 10,000 feet or something. You know, it's just anomaly.
And that anomaly and that
But they're just doing it. And if they were defending with... they had to have a small amount of them in World War I. Because the Germans did a 22-bomber raid on London. Okay. So everything's smaller scale.
Right.
And in 1937, they only had 181 pieces to defend the entire country with, not just London.
Yeah.
So you got to think it's scaled up massively. So these things are just everywhere, just firing in different directions as they come over. Boom, you countryside, you East County, you North County, and just sending them. Right?
I guess so.
It's absurd. So anyways, the British were the good guys.
Definitely.
The Americans were also the good guys. And don't pay attention that we allied with communists.
Right.
Don't let that factor into your thinking at all. I just think it's a pretty interesting, entertaining story.
It is. It's so far out there, so absurd. There's, like you said, there's no way that's true.
There's no way, right? And it is, yeah.
And not just World War II, World War I.
Right. Yeah, and so like, I don't know. Just trust the British were right. We'll say.
Right.
Okay.
Cool. What do you guys think? That was definitely new information for me. Do you have any other stories like this that are, you've read something like this dude read and he knows the thing? We'd love to hear below. If it's good enough, we'll do a video on it. We'll see you next time.